What is going on, everyone? Welcome to the Poke Office. My name is Colin. Today we're looking at 8 Pokemon cards under $50 in the market price that I think could absolutely go boom. You know what I'm talking about? Like, these cards just seem severely undervalued so far in Scarlet and Violet era. And I've been watching some content lately on Scarlet and Violet era. Like, here's what I think is actually really happening. Sword and Shield era in the past had so many amazing alternate arts, like the top chase cards, top tier, S tier chase cards that were like, I gotta get my hands on that. Scarlet and Violet era is more like there's a few really good top chase cards, but there is so much depth to Scarlet and Violet era. Like, illustration rares are absolutely amazing. Lots of the special illustration rares are amazing. They're not that top tier chase card worth hundreds of dollars, but it's still pretty exciting to get your hands on a copy of it. And, I mean, they're just ripe for the taking. Like, I got to get my hands on lots of them. There's so many that I want, even though the value might not necessarily be there like Sword and Shield era. So, in this video, 8 and a couple extra, it's actually going to be 10 because there's 2 extra ones that I'm going to look at. So 8 cards, aka 10 cards that are under $50 currently that I just think really could do well. The other thing I want to say before we get to the list is, if you remember back, like, I want to say 6 months ago now, I can't remember the exact time frame, but there was just this absolute explosion in Sword and Shield alternate arts. Like, the Moonbreon went from a $600 card to a $900 card. At a time, there was, like, I think 5 Evolving Skies cards above $300. The Giratina was way up. The Gengar VMAX was way up. So many of those, like, top cards in Sword and Shield spiked, and then they've come back down a bit, but for the most part, they're higher than they were at that big spike. I think the same thing could easily happen in Scarlet and Violet era, where so many of these cards, like, legitimately, these aren't even on the list, but you can get some special illustration rare cards in Scarlet and Violet era under $5. That's outrageous. That's outrageous. I can't believe it. Like, I kind of want to get my hands on as many of those as I can. Under $5 special illustration rare cards, those could easily double over time. They might not, too. Like, I'm just speculating. But anyways, I'm off on a side tangent. Here's my list. 8, aka 10 cards that could go boom in Scarlet and Violet era. Here we go. All right, number 1 is this Persian from Shrouded Fable. I think this card is so good. And here's the thing that I really like about it. Number 1, it goes along with Giovanni's Charisma, which is absolutely spectacular. I love that there's, like, it's the same card, but in a different light. And the Persian actually, like, it's looking out the window now, waiting for Giovanni. I think that's absolutely spectacular. I think it's a really cool combination of cards. But number 2, I think Shrouded Fable is a really sleeper set. People are not interested in it. People are not opening it. And I'm seeing the supply and demand issue be a little bit out of whack because people aren't interested in it. And because people aren't opening it, these cards are actually holding value better than a typical set that people don't like, because it's like you can't find a copy of them. And I do think in Shrouded Fable, there are cards that people actually want. So I'm not saying it's ever going to be like a huge hitting card, but at currently $21.30, I think this card could do pretty well. Right when it came out, it was a $40 card. I could see this card going back up to $30 or $40 at some point, especially if people continue not opening Shrouded Fable. It just means that there's not enough supply for this card, and I think this is a card that people want in their collection, especially paired with this Giovanni's Charisma from 151, which in itself is a very inexpensive card, $11.66. That's the lightly played, actually. Let's take a look at Near Mint. Near Mint, $12.24. Still ridiculously cheap, actually on the rise. 151 seems to be one of those unstoppable forces of Pokemon sets that no matter how much they print of it, it just keeps getting eaten up, and people keep wanting to open it all over the place. Like, everywhere I see rip and ships and people just opening 151. My own channel, people love opening 151 as well. All right, on to number 2 on the list. We got Gastly, the illustration rare from Temporal Forces. reasons why I love this card. It's got the Meowth right there hiding from the ghosts, which is absolutely epic. But this card is a Gen 1 Pokemon from Kanto, Gastly. It's got Haunter in it. It's got Gengar in it. It has so much to offer in terms of like a little bit of nostalgia, really cool artwork, and we've seen that depth of Scarlet and Violet era where illustration rares just are so good. I think this card could do well. Current market price is $23.91. It's kind of at its low though. Like 3 months ago, it was $25. 6 months ago, it spiked right at the start of Temporal Forces up to $33. So I'd say this card could do some damage. It could just stay at a $20 card as well. There's no question about it. I'm just speculating, of course. But just considering how popular of a Pokemon Gengar is, I think there's a case to be made that Gastly could carry some weight with it as well. Leading me on to number 3. This one I almost put way higher up on the list because it's just so good. Everything just goes to lightly played, which is so frustrating on TCG Player these days. But this Eevee card from Twilight Masquerade, I think is maybe the best illustration rare out of Scarlet and Violet era in terms of like artwork, nostalgia. I mean, I could be wrong. There could be the Magikarp that could be better, but it's definitely one of them. It's one of the top 2 or 3 illustration rare chase cards out of Scarlet and Violet era so far. And here's the case to be made for this Eevee doing absolutely amazing. Currently it's at $49.06. It's kind of been there since the release. It's actually been on the rise a little bit. But there's this new set called Prismatic Evolution and Terastal Festival in Japanese that's coming out, all about Eevees yet again. There's just something about Eevee and Eeveelutions that make these cards outrageously good. People love and can't get enough of Eevee and the evolutions of Eevee. So with this new high-class Japanese set and specialty set in English coming out in January, I mean, it's just going to put more and more emphasis on Eevee. So why would you not want a copy of this card in your binder? I think this card could do really good over time. All right, next up, the Roaring Moon. Another beautiful card. I can't believe it, actually. $49.92, so it's just under, at the time of recording, just under the $50 mark. But this card has been way higher than $50 for a while. Okay, 6 months ago, it was a $70 card. Now it's a $50 card. I think this card is one of the better special illustration rares, actually. I think, actually, as a side rant, Paradox Rift has so many good special illustration rares that are significantly underpriced. There's another one at the end of this list, which is probably my favorite card on the list in terms of that could go boom, but you have to wait and find out. So Roaring Moon, I think it's really good, honestly. It's a cool card. I'm not convinced about the ancient and future Pokemon. That's my one caveat towards this card. Do people actually care about the little gimmick of ancient and future Pokemon? It was a cool little thing that happened for, 2 sets? We had it in Paradox Rift and Temporal Forces. Is it going to continue? Was it just that little extra on the Scarlet and Violet era games? Like it was 1 DLC worth of content and it came out in 2 sets worth of Pokemon TCG content? I'm not sure. Do people care enough about this card? But in terms of artwork, in terms of hard to pull, it took me a long time to pull this card. I think Roaring Moon has a case to do very well. Which leads us on to the next 3. They kind of go as a combo. But before we get there, if you're liking this video, make sure to subscribe to the channel with bell notifications on. Hit the like button. Leave a comment. I appreciate you. What cards under $50 do you think are going to just go boom in the marketplace? I mean, 2025, I do think is going to be an absolutely huge year for Pokemon. Okay, here's the next 3. Here they are, the Bulbasaur from Stellar Crown, the Squirtle from Stellar Crown, and the Charmander from the Obsidian Flames Elite Trainer box. Just so good. These cards didn't seem terribly hard to pull. Stellar Crown's a fairly smaller set, so I pulled quite a few of these when we opened Stellar Crown on the channel. This Bulbasaur, $37.02. It has kind of seemed to hit that low mark, and now it's rebounding a little bit since release. The Squirtle also big time down over the first month or two of Stellar Crown release. Now it's leveling off a little bit at $43.74. Then we have the Charmander. This one has been out for a while and actually picking up steam again. Here's the thing. These cards are all they're the original Kanto starters. How do you argue against that? The artwork is spectacular. They're all in like the household. Charmander's chasing after a Pidgey. Squirtle has Pidgeys all around in the bathtub or the pool, and Bulbasaur's got a Pidgey as well. Like, it's hitting so much of the nostalgia of Pokemon Blue and Pokemon Red video games, and just like picking your starter. I love everything about it. Plus, it creates a really cool little trilogy in your binder. But here's what I actually want to show you. The Pokemon Center version of this Charmander has been going outrageous lately. Really a big spike in the last month and a half here. $72.32 now. That is crazy. Just as a little side rant, these Pokemon Center exclusive Elite Trainer boxes are doing some damage in the marketplace. So if you were smart enough to buy some of these as they came out, like, these seem to be a very collectible item now, where every set Pokemon Center releases the Pokemon Center exclusive Elite Trainer box, and it comes with this promo card that has the stamp on it, and they sell out right quick. Like, I buy 4 of them every time. I just can't not. And I just sold my 151 ones for a huge profit. Huge profit. Those ones were going crazy as well. I mean, maybe I sold early, but it's, Okay, back to the cards. I just think there's so much to be said about the Charmander, Squirtle, and Bulbasaur. Okay, next one. We got 2 left. This Houndoom, $19.71. It's such a good card. It's such a unique card. The things I would argue for this Houndoom doing really well in the future is that it's part of that Shrouded Fable argument where people just are not opening it. People like Houndoom. People probably want this card, and yet there's not that many out there. So that's where I'm at with this. The part where I'd argue against this card going boom is it's not Gen 1. Like, if you've noticed, most of these Pokemon that I've talked about today are Generation 1. I think there's something to be said as the millennials continue to flood back into the hobby that these Gen 1 Kanto Pokemon are truly where the money is in the Pokemon space right now. And everything else kind of is just secondary. So Houndoom not being that Generation 1 Pokemon, I'm not sure people are going to flock towards this one. Though, a very, very cool Pokemon and one of Deep Pocket Monster's favorites. So there's another plus in the pro versus con department. Last card we're going to talk about is this Iron Valiant from Paradox Rift. It's just such a good card. The artwork is spectacular, hard to pull. Like, the pull rates definitely had that. They got harder in Paradox Rift as these sets were coming out. And I just can't believe the price on this one. $19.39 for this Iron Valiant card. Like, seriously, I need to buy like 10 copies of this card because I think this one could do some real damage. I think this one could go absolutely boomtastic in the marketplace. Once again, I've made the argument already, but the only thing I don't like about this card, potentially, is this future or ancient Pokemon gimmick. Like, is that actually a thing people care about? Do people care about the Ralt evolution line that much? Do people care about the Gardevoir and Gallade? That's where I'm a little bit hesitant. But this card, the artwork, everything about it is just spectacular. And the fact that you can get illustrations and special illustration rares like this for under $20, it just doesn't seem right to me. Scarlet and Violet era is absolutely crushing it. I think there's probably lots more cards that could have been on this list, but I mean, you had to pick some, or I had to pick some. Let me know what you thought. What cards did I miss? What cards do you think could go boom over the next little bit here in Scarlet and Violet era? I do think, as my last final point towards this whole video, there's this new wave of people coming into the Pokemon space. It's noticeable. It's noticeable. People are excited about Surging Sparks. People are excited about 151 still. People are excited about Battle Partners. People are excited about the Eevee set, Prismatic Evolution. People are excited about Glory of Team Rocket. Like, it's just a good time to be in the Pokemon space. And I think just like back during the COVID days where things went absolutely crazy, I could definitely see the whole Pokemon market turning on its head yet again, going absolutely crazy. So some of the cards that I'm looking to pick up were the ones we talked about today. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to hit all the buttons for me and leave a comment. Appreciate all your support. I will talk to you next time. Peace.